Tell us a little bit just about putting this latest news into context. How does the FAA come out and make a decision and say something like the plane is still airworthy? What goes into a decision like that?
Well, recall that when this aircraft was certified, it went through extensive testing, extremely wide expansion of the flight envelope to make sure the aircraft was stable, it was recoverable through all regimes of flight. And I think people suggesting that they perhaps should ground the airplane would be incredibly premature because it would be conjecture. We really don't know what happened. It certainly, there clearly was a very bad accident, but we're not certain why. And there's other alternative solutions that the FAA could use. For example, you could, most of the equipment in the airplane under certain conditions can be inoperative, and you can operate with different limitations. They could certainly do that. They could simply disarm the system and use some more stringent limitations. You might have to operate the aircraft slightly differently to keep inside the safety envelope. But there's a lot of options well short of grounding the airplane.
Well, Randy, when we talk about those options, though, I mean, usually when we have a catastrophic aircraft crash like this, it's usually a one-off event. But when you have sort of two back-to-back with a lot of similarities, we know how long it can take for the FAA to kind of sort through all this and come to an actual cause. But in the interim, do you think that there's enough reason for why the FAA or any of the international bodies should maybe disable this particular feature of the software system?
Well, again, it would be a little bit of conjecture. It is extremely uncommon to have, two accidents back-to-back like this, but statistically it's not impossible. I mean, 1 in a million happens every 1 in a million times, so, in theory. And so I think it would be conjecture at this point. And the FAA, remember that the FAA itself doesn't actually investigate the accidents. That's the National Transportation Safety Board. Right. And in this case, the aircraft will be investigated by Ethiopian authorities. And I'm pleased that they did request the assistance because the NTSB is a very capable and very worldwide recognized as some of the top accident investigators in the world. So they'll get into it and into it quickly, and I think we have the advantage that, unfortunately, where the accident was, it will be relatively simple to record or recover the black boxes, both the voice recorder and the flight data recorder, and they should read those out very quickly and hopefully give us a little more insight into what actually happened. But that'll be done by the NTSB, and they certainly will share that with the FAA.
Your experience, Mr. Babbitt, when, of course, at the moment, many people, many consumers are desperately looking at what type of aircraft they might be taking a flight on and indeed worrying about that. How can a company, how can an airline educate and make certainly the consumers feel safe when you've got China and Indonesia taking their own steps and grounding those planes?
Well, I'm not certain what criteria they used. Again, our aviation system is absolutely, the gold standard of the world. Everyone looks to what the FAA does when setting criteria, along with ICAO. And there's been nothing so far to have shown. We had an incorrect sensor. I think there'll be some review or a sensor that sent some bad data. I think there will be a review at some point in time that any sensor that's giving or allowed to have command authority over control surfaces should at least give an oral warning or a visual warning that it's making an input to a system. I think that will certainly be one of the things that comes from the investigation. But I haven't seen anything that says what has happened thus far would be reason to ground the aircraft based on neither of the voice recorders or flight recorders having been read.